Parti Quebecois has introduced new legislation that could bar some immigrants from running in elections. The PQ says immigrants who can't speak French adequately after taking provincially funded language classes should not be allowed to run in provincial or municipal elections. It goes further than that. It says the identity bill would also require all immigrants without a working knowledge of French to be barred from funding political parties or addressing petitions to the National Assembly. So, to talk about the bill and why it was proposed, I'm joined by Parti Quebecois MNA Alexandre Cloutier in Quebec City. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell me why you feel this bill is necessary?
Well, it's a bill that does express better the Quebec national identity. We're very proud of it, and it does inscribe in the context right now of the Commission Bouchard-Taylor.
I need you to explain that a little more for me if you can, because there has been some criticism, of course, elsewhere in Canada, perhaps even in Quebec. There is a sense from the outside looking in that this seems more to reflect an idea that the province is less of a province that advocates equal rights and more of a country club with a limited membership. Why shouldn't immigrants who can't speak French be allowed to run?
Well, for the same reasons that an immigrant cannot have the Canadian citizenship if he doesn't have the ability to speak English. We basically copied the the Canadian Immigration Act. So basically it's the same condition. We're asking immigrants to have a basic knowledge of French. And we think it's reasonable to ask people who come live in Quebec that have a basic knowledge of French to be eligible to election and have the Quebec citizenship.
Is it the same though, sir? Respectfully, you know, Canadian citizenship comes with a certain number of rights. One of those rights is that you can run for public office. I mean, you can fund a political party if you like. Why would you prevent them from funding political parties?
Well, if they have the Canadian citizenship, they have the rights you have just mentioned. But to have the Canadian citizenship, you have to have a knowledge of English or French. So basically we're doing the same. You have to have a basic knowledge of French to be eligible to run for an election, for instance, or to finance a political party. It's a copy, basically, of the condition in the Canadian Immigration Act.
So you see this as another level of citizenship? So there's like Canadian citizenship, which applies for the rest of the country, and then now there's this new tier that you're bringing in that you would think of as sort of Quebec citizenship. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. There will be a Quebec citizenship that will give basically 3 rights. I can name you those 3 rights that will be run in municipal election, participate in public funding of political party, and the right to depose petition at the National Assembly. Those are not big rights, to be honest. I mean, it's mainly symbolic. As you can notice, the Canadian citizenship gives the rights to vote. In Quebec, we didn't go that far. I mean, you don't have to have your Quebec citizenship to have the right to vote. Every Canadian will have that right. Well, but you have to have the Quebec citizenship to be eligible to Quebec election. Let
me explore this a little further, because we talk about this being in terms of immigrants. But let me give you an example. I'm living here in Calgary. I have a working knowledge of French. I don't know if I'd pass your test or not. I'm not really sure about that. But does that mean that if I moved to Quebec, if I moved to downtown Montreal and I decided, you know what, maybe I want to run for office. Maybe I just want to donate to the local political party. You're saying I shouldn't be able to do that unless I pass your test first. Is that what you're saying?
I should have said first that everyone who lives in Quebec and everyone who is a Canadian that lives in Quebec will have the rights, will have the Quebec citizenship automatically. It's only when the act will be passed, only for people moving from outside the country. Well, for instance, you in Alberta, if you move to Montreal, you will have to have a basic knowledge of French. I'm only talking about basic knowledge of French to be eligible to run for a provincial election.
But to be clear, and I just want to be clear about this, you were not just talking about running for public office. You're also, according to this bill, talking about giving money to political parties. You're talking about addressing a petition to the National Assembly. That's all there as well, isn't it?
Three rights. Absolutely, you're absolutely right.
Can you see why some people would feel like? Can you see why some people would feel like you're excluding them, even if they're Canadian citizens? You're excluding them from partaking in a political process that is designed to involve everybody.
Well, we think that people should have a basic knowledge, just basic knowledge again, of French to be eligible. We think that it's reasonable. I mean, we think that it could be easily justified under the Canadian right. And of course, we worked that bill with political expert and constitutional expert. And so far, we have been told that, I mean, we could reasonably defend it in front of the Canadian Charter. So basically, we copied the Canadian Immigration Act, and the Canadian Citizenship Act, and those are the same conditions except the right to vote, which we let to every Canadian, even the one who are not able to say a word of French.
Finally, the bill would extend the French obligation to all companies with 25 employees or more, as I understand it. Have any concerns that that's going to drive any business out of a province that frankly seems to be hungry for more businesses to operate there?
Well, not really. We're very afraid, well, not afraid, I should say we're very worried about protecting the French language. And again, we think it's very reasonable to ask to be a bit stricter in the terms of the application of the Quebec Charter, the French language Quebec Charter.
Monsieur Cloutier, I want to thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.